Oh, that's bright.
That's the idea.
Make sure all of my allergic reactions stand out.
Go wild. You're live.
Oh, hi. Hi everybody, sorry we're getting a little bit of a late start tonight. I was naive enough to believe that I could find a parking space in Salem at dinner time. So we have a bit of a change tonight. Al will be running the boards instead of Fox. Everybody say hi, Al.
They know who I am.
They know who you are, I know. So I want to remind everybody, because we had a bit of a quiet group out there on the internet last week. You are an important part of the study group. So please feel free to chime in, answer any questions I have, post questions, post comments, random remarks, tell me that my hair is looking nice tonight, anything like that, and we'll get started. We're in Chapter 2, Section 2, Meeting with the Goddess tonight. And Campbell starts off. The ultimate adventure, when all the battles and ogres have been overcome, it is commonly represented as a mystical marriage. And then something in Greek I can't pronounce. Of the triumphs of the hero's soul with the queen goddess of the world. This is the crisis of the nadir, at the zenith or at the uttermost edge of the earth, at the central point of the cosmos, in the tabernacle of the temple, or within the darkness of the deepest chamber of the heart. So this is basically, as I was joking with Brendan as we were driving here, the part of the story when the pretty lady shows up. But generally, or the love interest, or the powerful feminine figure that might represent the cosmic powers of the story. And the meeting with the goddess can take on many different roles. And we're going to sort of take on a case study approach to this. I've got 3 different myths that Campbell talks about that sort of describe 3 different ways this encounter with the goddess can go. And I'm going to ask the people in the group and you at home to sort of discuss these cases and see what it has to say about this particular step in the hero's journey. So the first story of the encounter of with the goddess comes from West Ireland, from the story of Tubertini, and the prince who came to this well, the well of Tubertini, to gather some of the magical water from this flaming well in order to heal the Queen of Erin. Erin's another archaic name for Ireland. Hoping to heal the Queen of Erin, the heroic youth has undertaken to go for 3 bottles of water of Tubertini, the flaming fairy well, following the advice of a supernatural aunt whom he has encountered on the way, and riding a wonderful, dirty, lean, shabby horse that she gave to him. He crosses a river of fire and escapes the touch of a grove of poison trees. The horse, with the speed of the wild shot, passed the end of the castle of Tubertini. The prince sprang from its back through an open window and came down safe and sound. And so there you've got the part of the story that we talked about last week, the road of trials, the thing that the hero has to go through to get to this spiritual moment, this encounter with the goddess. The whole place, enormous in extent, was filled with sleeping giants and monsters of sea and land, great whales, long slippery eels, bears, and beasts of every form and kind. The prince passed through them and over them till he came to a great stairway. At the head of the stairway, he went into a chamber where he found the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, stretched out on a couch, asleep. "I'll have nothing to say to you," thought he, and went on to the next room. And so he looked into 12 chambers, and each was a woman more beautiful than the one before. But when he reached the 13th chamber and opened the door, a flash of gold took the sight from his eyes. He stood a while until the sight came back, then entered. In the great bright chamber was a golden couch, resting on wheels of gold. The wheels turned continually, the couch went round and round, never stopping, night or day. On the couch lay the Queen of Tubertini, and her 12 maidens. And if her 12 maidens were beautiful, they were not beautiful if seen near her. At the foot of the couch was Tubertini itself, the well of fire. There was a golden cover upon the well, and it went around continually with the couch of the queen. "Upon my word," said the prince, "I'll rest here a while." And he went up on the couch and never left it for 6 days and nights. So I'm going to ask people for first impressions about this story. Any thoughts, just off the cuff, listening to the story, about what this might have to say with the encounter with the goddess?
I'm not too sure what to think of it. It doesn't seem like the traditional fairy tales you hear about them.
Okay. Anyone on the internet?
Nope.
How many people, out of curiosity, do we have in our chat room tonight?
Discuss ratings on the air? How blasé.
Well, I'd just like to know who I'm talking to.
We have people.
We have people. Oh, good. So do the people have anything to say?
Nope.
Nope. People, stay on topic in the chats. Sheesh.
They're not chatting right now.
Oh. Alright. So my initial impression of this story was basically the idea that of the 12 beautiful women who come before the last one, the Queen of Tubertini. And the idea essentially that the thing that the hero is looking for is more beautiful than anything he has encountered before. The idea that the hero will not settle until he finds this perfection, in this case the Queen of Tubertini. And we'll see what Campbell has to say about this story. The Lady of the House of Sleep is a familiar figure in fairy tale and myth. We have already spoken of her under the form of Brynhild and Little Briar Rose. She is the paragon of all beauty, the reply to all desire, the bliss-bestowing goal of every hero's earthly and unearthly quest. She is mother, sister, mistress, bride. Whatever in the world has lured, whatever has seemed to promise joy, has been premonitory of her experience in the deeps of sleep, if not in the cities and the forests of the world, for she is the incarnation of the promise of perfection, the soul's assurance that, at the conclusion of its exile in a world of organized inadequacies, the bliss that once was known will be known again. The comforting, the nourishing, the good mother, young and beautiful, who was known to us and even tasted in the remotest past. Time sealed her away, yet she is dwelling still, like one who sleeps in timelessness, at the bottom of the timeless sea. So here again you get the sort of Freudian idea of the ultimate quest being for the return to the experience, the comfort of one's own mother. And it is often said that men like women who are similar to their mother. That is sort of a saying. But yeah, it's the idea that the hero finds the ultimate perfection. And that is what the sleeping queen represents here. In other stories, Briar Rose. And in many stories, you know, the hero will have had lots of women thrust upon him. Like before when we talked about Prince Kamar and Princess Berber, who would not settle for anyone less than, because they believed all men and women were inferior, they were just going to have nothing to do with them until they met each other and found the perfection of that mate. I'm reminded of any 90s children here saw remember the old Swan Princess movie, where the prince had, with the Princesses on Parade musical number, where you had princesses from every kingdom, and they were decked out in these ridiculous costumes, and each was more accomplished than the next, and Derek would have nothing to do with them. And I'm sure any purists who are familiar with the story of the Swan Princess itself, apart from the Disney movie, are groaning at that reference, but I think even the Disney and cheesy animated adaptations are very much part of our modern myth, as well as the actual things like that. But there are other types of encounters with the goddess, and we'll see a couple of examples of those next. The remembered image is not only benign. For the bad mother, too, either the absent, unattainable mother against whom aggressive fantasies are directed, and from whom a counter-aggression is feared, 2, The hampering, forbidding, punishing mother. 3. The mother who would hold to herself the growing child, trying to push away. And finally, the desired but forbidden mother. The Oedipus complex, whose presence is alert to the dangerous desire, castration complex, that persists in the hidden land of the adult infantile recollection, and is sometimes even the greater force. So let's talk about a couple of examples of these mother archetypes in different fantasy and different stories. For example, the absent, unattainable mother, against whom aggressive fantasies are directed. A lot of times now, I think, more often than not, that's the mother image you see on shows like Law & Order SVU, or Criminal Minds. A lot of modern crime thriller, that genre is very much dedicated to investigating the consequences of that archetype. I think largely because of the work that was done, I believe, in the 1950s by one Dr. Spock, the child psychologist, not the Vulcan, who basically blamed all of society's ills on mothers who were not doted upon, did not dote upon their children enough. In fact, Spock once postulated that the government should pay mothers, there should be a an allowance of government money to each mother so that they can stay at home and devote themselves to the care of their child, in order that we can have well-functioning, well-adjusted adults in the future and not a bunch of juvenile delinquents. Does anybody else have any examples of the sort of absent, unattainable mother? If we're going with the normal theme, Fox isn't here, but the normal theme of what is the Once Upon a Time equivalent of this would definitely be Regina, the evil queen, who is the sort of unattainable mother that the little boy is looking for, and also in Emma's case, the fact that she was cut off from her mother, and sort of is bitter and jaded because of that. That's sort of the response of that. And now she is clashing with Regina, who is the sort of, unbeknownst to her, the one who cut her off from her own mother, and sort of the evil mother figure. Second archetype, the hampering, forbidding, punishing mother. That would definitely be the evil stepmother archetype in things like Cinderella. Does anybody else have any examples of what that one might be?
Well, I guess that's just a representation of evil, right?
Evil, or the obstacles, the things that want to keep the hero from going on his journey, or the person from growing up. Al, you're also welcome to contribute to this as guy sitting on the boards.
Sure thing.
If you can think of anything. The mother who would hold to herself the growing child, trying to push away. And I think of this one, I think of the witch / mother from the Rapunzel myth, who wants to keep the daughter locked in the tower. And if we want to go back to Disney movies and musical numbers, I think of the musical number Mother Knows Best from the movie Tangled. That whole scene, I think, definitely displays this archetype. And fourth, the desired but forbidden mother, Oedipus complex. And Oedipus is a very good example of that. And once again, I think this is another one that modern crime thrillers have really devoted themselves to, is figuring out how these obsessions affect the people who later become serial killers and act out their fantasies on their victims. Any other thoughts? All right. Then we're going to segue into our next case study, which is the story of Diana and Actaeon from Greek mythology. Or perhaps, since it's Diana, this would be Roman. Actaeon chanced to see the dangerous goddess at noon. For those of you who are unfamiliar, Diana was the virgin goddess of the hunt. And when she had asked, when Zeus, her father, asked to, or I suppose it would be Jupiter in this, since it's Roman, asked her to what she wanted, all she wanted for the rest of her life was to be wild and free and remain a virgin and unspoiled by men so that she could go about and live this unhampered life. Actaeon chanced to see the dangerous goddess at noon, that fateful moment when the sun breaks in its youthful strong ascent, balances, and begins the mighty plunge to death. He had left his companions to rest, together with his bloodied dogs, after a morning of running game, and without conscious purpose had gone wandering astray from his familiar hunting groves and fields, exploring through the neighboring woods. He discovered a vale, thick grown with cypress and pine. He penetrated curiously into its fastness. There was a grotto within it, watered by a gentle, purling spring, and with a stream that widened into a grassy pool. The shaded nook was the resort of Diana, and at that moment she was bathing among her nymphs, absolutely naked. And if that doesn't get your attention in the chat room, I don't know what will. She had put aside her hunting spear, her quiver, her unstrung bow, as well as her sandals and her robe. And one of the nymphs had bound up her tresses into a knot. Some of the others were pouring water from a capacious urn. While the young, roving male broke into the pleasant haunt, a shriek of female terror went up, and all the bodies crowded about their mistress, trying to hide her from the profane eyes. But she stood up above them, head and shoulders. The youth had seen, and was continuing to see. She glanced for her bow, but it was out of reach, so she quickly took up what was at hand, namely water, and flung it into Actaeon's face. "Now you are free to tell if you can," she cried at him angrily, "that you have seen the goddess nude." Antlers sprouted on his head. His neck grew great and long, his ear-tips sharp. His arms lengthened to legs, and his hands and feet became hooves. Bless you.
Sorry.
Terrified, he bounded, marveling that he should move so rapidly. But when he paused for breath and drink, he beheld his features in a clear pool. He reared back, aghast. A terrible fate then befell Actaeon. His own hounds, catching the scent of the great stag, came baying through the woods. In a moment of joy at hearing them, he paused, but then spontaneously took fright and fled. The pack followed, gradually gaining. When they had come to his heels, the first of them flying at his flank, he tried to cry their names, but the sound in his throat was not human. They fixed him with their fangs. He went down, and his own hunting companions, shouting encouragement at the dogs, arrived in time to deliver the coup de grace. Diana, miraculously aware of the flight and death, could now rest appeased. So what do we think about this specific case study and what it entails?
That there is danger engaged in the quest for knowledge.
That could be it, and a danger in sort of seeking out this encounter with a mother, that it is not necessarily inherently the comforting experience of returning to one's mother. There's a more powerful aspect to it. And she does represent in many ways the knowledge or the boon that the hero hopes to gain, or is the source, or in many cases is the source of that boon. If we remember back a few chapters to the wild women of the Russian hills, who could grant knowledge of herb lore and healing to any man who could romance them and treat them right, but would kill those they didn't like. There's that same element there, yeah.
Well, and the same was kind of harsh too, because it didn't really seem like it was his quest. Basically, it seemed like he stumbled upon her.
And in many ways, perhaps it also speaks to the dangers for the uninitiated to sort of stumble on these things. You know, if you're not ready and if you're not prepared, you might not survive the encounter. Actaeon didn't go through any sort of road of trials. He wasn't tested. He just kind of stumbled in. The mythological figure, going back to Campbell, of the universal mother imputes to the cosmos the feminine attributes of the first, nourishing and protecting presence. The fantasy is primarily spontaneous. But there have also been, in numerous religious traditions, skipping a bit, a consciously controlled pedagogical utilization of the archetype of the image for the purging, balancing, and initiation, the road of trials part. of the mind in the nature of the visible world, and also that the encounter with the goddess can be a part of the road of trials. It can be a test. In the tantric books of medieval and modern India, the abode of the goddess is called Mani Divpa, or the Island of Jewels. And this is where you get into some of the more complex and less pretty aspects of the goddess. Her couch and throne is there, in a grove of wish-fulfilling trees. The beaches of the isle are golden sands. They are laved by the still waters of the ocean of the nectar of immortality. The goddess is red with the fire of life, the earth, the solar system, the galaxies of far-extending space, all swell within her womb. For she is the world's creatrix, ever mother, ever virgin. She encompasses the encompassing, nourishes the nourishing, and is the life of everything that lives. And when people traditionally think, at least in the West, of the goddess figure, this is what they see, or the mother figure. But there's a second part to the Hindi creatrix. She is also the death of everything that dies. The whole round of existence is accomplished within her sway, from birth through adolescence, maturity and sentience, to the grave. She is the womb and the tomb, the stab that eats her farrow. Thus, she unites the good and the bad, exhibiting the two modes of the remembered mother, not only as personal only, but as universal. The devotee is expected to contemplate the two with equal equanimity. Through this exercise, his spirit is purged of his infantile, inappropriate sentimentalities and resentments, and his mind is opened to the inscrutable presence which exists, not primarily as good and bad with respect to his childlike human convenience, his weal and woe, but to the law and image of the natural being. So the second part of the encounter with the goddess is sort of transcending those four mother types, to the archetypical, to the mother that encompasses all of these things. There's a book that I've been referring to called The Woman Who Run with Wolves, and it's all about the wild women archetype, which is in many ways this mother goddess figure. And there's a term that is used to describe her as the life-death-life goddess, of the cycle of life and death and then rebirth. Another story that this made me think of is something in the wise women tradition, which is sort of a goddess spirituality / women's health tradition. The two are kind of infused. And this is something that, if any of you are familiar with the writings of Susan Weed, she tells this story of the creation of the earth, of a spider. The goddess in the earth is a spider who gives birth to her young, and when they hatch, she says, "You eat me," and feeds them with her body. They feed off of her, and they grow and they flourish. And then when they are big enough, she turns to them and says, "Now I eat you," and devours her children. Much in the same way, a person is nourished by the earth, and then when they die are buried and swallowed up by it, and in the sort of process of decay become a part of it again and nourish the land for future generations. Any comments on this? Bit more gruesome than you were expecting today. What else do I have for notes? The Hindu mystic of the 19th century named Ramakrishna was a priest in a temple newly erected in the to the Cosmic Mother at Dakshineswar, a suburb of Calcutta. The temple image displayed the divinity in her two aspects simultaneously, the terrible and benign. Her forearms exhibited the symbols of the universal power, the upper left hand brandishing a bloody saber, the lower gripping by the hair a severed human head. The upper right was lifted in the fear not gesture, the lower extended in the bestowal of boons. So that's sort of a contradicting image, but this is something you find in a lot of Hindu statues, especially those relating to Kali or Shiva. Those two deities are often portrayed very fearsomely, but also with gestures of peace and of calm. The Hindus have these mudras, which are hand positions, and they can affect different parts of your body, but also mean different things, and are incorporated in dance, and everything from dance to yoga. So that's where these sort of symbols come from. I wish I knew exactly what the Fear Not sign looked like, so I could show you, but I do not off the top of my head. So this is another case study, and this is the mystic. He was this mystic or guru. This was his encounter with the Cosmic Mother. One quiet afternoon, Ramakrishna beheld a beautiful woman ascend from the Ganges and approach the grove in which he was meditating. He perceived that she was about to give birth to a child. In a moment, the babe was born, and she gently nursed it. Presently, however, she assumed a horrible aspect, took the infant in her now ugly jaws, and crushed it, chewing it. Swallowing it, she returned again to the Ganges, where she disappeared. And this, I think, is where a lot of people have trouble. How do you reconcile the mother goddess aspect with the destructive goddess aspect? We in the West especially have trouble with this idea. And as somebody not really familiar with the mythoses and the idea of this sort of duality of the goddess, what's your take on it?
It's trying to show that nature is neither. Nature is both good and bad at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Or even
that there isn't necessarily a distinction. It isn't all good. It isn't all bad at the same time.
Or even maybe that it's not good or bad. It's neither. It just is. And this is the way things are. I don't know. I mean, is this? I take it this is all totally new to you.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. I mean, some of us, like, I've read a lot of Hindu mythology and things like that, and while there are many people in the pagan community who may prefer the more peaceful aspects of the goddess and avoid the more destructive, this may be new to some of them as well. And I wonder again if anyone in the chat has any questions about this.
Just a comment that everything has balance.
That's true. That is very true. Everything has balance, and it's all the idea of fire, and this is a symbol of Shiva, who is another sort of creation destruction god. The fire that burns things away, so that and which is destructive, but then new can be born in its place. I gotta read my own writing to see my notes. And one other thing Campbell points out is that Actaeon couldn't understand this dual nature, whereas Ramakrishna observed it and understood it and therefore left the encounter unharmed. Actaeon was shattered by it, basically, in his transformation. Women in the picture language of mythology represent the totality of what can be known. The hero is the one who comes to know. As he progresses in the slow initiation which is life, the form of the goddess undergoes for him a series of transfigurations. She can never be greater than himself, though she can always promise more than he is, yet is capable of comprehending. She lures, she guides, she bids him burst his feathers, and if he can match her import, the two, the knower and the known, will be released from every limitation. Now, this idea of trying to reconcile the two aspects of God, I really wish I had thought of this before I sat down and was reading this 2 seconds ago, or rereading it. Many of you from high school English, or if you take a college class on Blake, may remember the poems Little Lamb Who Made Thee and Tiger, Tiger Burning Bright by William Blake. And when I first read these in school, I thought, oh, these are the dumbest, cutesiest poems ever, why are we reading them? But then I read them in college, again, in context with Blake's larger work, and basically his book, Songs of Innocence and Experience. And the first half of the book are poems that are songs of innocence, basically the young child, his view of the world, his view of God. God is the one who created and protects the lamb. And the second half, the songs of experience, is now the point of view of the person who has seen the world, who has seen the ferocity of God, and is trying to rationalize, when he asks in the poem, I'm paraphrasing, but Tiger, were you made by the same one who made the little lamb? He's trying to reconcile these forces of benevolence and destruction. So if anybody wants extra credit, look up Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright, and Little Lamb Who Made Thee. And if you want to comment on them, I'm going to get back to maintaining the group on the Young Witches and Witch School sites for this chat. And if you wanted, for this discussion group, so if you want to go there and discuss this, that's your homework for the week. This is I believe the last case study we're going to do tonight. And that is the story of the 5 sons of the Irish king Eochaid. Eochaid, that's how we're going to pronounce it today, is Eochaid. Of how, having gone one day a-hunting, they found themselves astray, shut in on every hand. Thirsty, they set off one by one to look for water. Fergus was the first. And he lights on a well, over which he finds an old woman standing sentry. The fashion of the hag is this. Blacker than coal, every joint and segment of her was, from crown to ground. Comparable to a wild horse's tail, the grey, wiry mass of hair that pierced her scalp's upper surface, with her sickle of a greenish-looking tusk that was in her head and curled till it touched her ear. She could top the verdant branch of an oak in full bearing. Blackened and smoke-bleared eyes she had, nose awry, wide-nostriled, a winkled and freckled belly, various unwholesome, crooked shins, garnished with massive ankles and a pair of capacious shovels. Knotty knees she had, and livid nails. The bedlam's whole description was, in fact, disgusting. "That's the way, is it?" said the lad. "And that's the very way," she answered. "Is it guarding the well thou art?" he asked, and she said, "It is." "Dost thou license me to take away some water?" "I do," she consented, "yet only so that I can have of thee one kiss on my cheek." "Not so," he said, then the water shall not be conceded by me. My word I give," he went on, "that sooner than I give thee a kiss, I would perish of thirst." Then the young man departed to the place where his brethren were, and told them that he had not gotten water. That is probably the grossest description of any lady I have ever read. And I have to say, the Irish are probably, I love the sort of Celtic descriptors in this story, and the description of her. But that is neither here nor there. Bolial, Brian, and Fietra likewise went on the quest, and equally attained to the identical well. Each solicited the old thing for water, but denied her the kiss. Finally it was Niall who went, and he came to this very well. "Let me have some water, woman," he cried. "I will give it," said she, "and bestow on me a kiss." He answered, "For by giving thee a kiss, I will even hug thee." Then he bends to embrace her, and gives her a kiss, which operation ended, and when he looked at her, in the whole world was not as young a woman of gait, more graceful in universal semblance, fairer than she. To be likened to the last falling snow lying in trenches, every portion of her was. From crown and sole, plump and queenly forearms, fingers long and taper, straight legs of a lovely hue she had, 2 sandals of the white bronze betwixt her smooth and soft white feet, and the earth about her was an ample mantle of the choicest fleece, pure crimson, and in the garment a brooch of white silver she had lustrous teeth of pearl, and many other pretty qualities, which I will skim over. "Here, woman, is a galaxy of charms," said the young man. "That is true indeed. And who art thou?" he pursued. "Royal rule am I," she answered, and uttered this. "King of Tara, I am royal rule. Go now," she said, "to thy brethren, and take with thee water. Moreover, thine and thy children's forever the kingdom and supreme power shall be." And as the firstborn As the first thou hast seen me ugly, brutish, lowly, in the end, beautiful. Even so is royal rule, for without battles, without fierce conflict, it may not be won. But in the result, that he is king of no matter what, shows calmly and handsome forth. Such is royal rule, such is life itself, Campbell says. The goddess guardian of the inexhaustible well, whether as Fergus or as Actaeon, or as the prince of the lonesome isle discovered her, requires that the hero should be endowed with what the troubadours and minstrels term the gentle heart. Essentially, the story talks about is the idea that the hero needs to be able to accept with a gentle heart the goddess. He must be able to meet her as lover, as Niall was, and to not be cowed by her or the burden she represents. In this case, the ugly parts of battle that come with becoming king. So my modern example that I've been waiting all of this book to get to, I told you all last week your homework was to play Dragon Age Origins, is Morrigan as the Dark Initiator / goddess figure. For those of you who have played the game, you know that Alistair, who is the sort of lost scion of the dead king, has a couple of options at the end of the game. Your character, massive spoiler warning here, if you're going to play Dragon Age Origins in the future and don't want to be spoiled, mute it. But basically you have a couple of options at the end of the game. If you are the Grey Warden or hero, if your character is male, then you have the option of romancing, of basically having an affair with Morrigan, impregnating her, and that child will help you destroy the archdemon and save the world. If you're a female, you've got to convince Alistair to do the deed. Alistair the king. And this is sort of the first, or not the first, in a series of unpleasant tasks that he must commit. Basically, this reluctant hero who does not wish to be king, does not want to be king, has been avoiding it all of his life, never thought it was a possibility. And that the other choice is that you or he can sacrifice yourself to kill the demon, destroying it, the archdemon, destroying its soul. And basically, the idea that romancing Morrigan, who he's been those two have been at each other's throats the whole game, watching them fight and argue is probably one of the funniest parts of the game. The idea that basically, to do his duty as king, he has to overcome his dislike of Morrigan and do his duty and have a child with her. And that's sort of the first step, or one of the early steps in the hard decisions he has to make as he becomes king. And she sort of initiates him into that. And that's the example of this archetype that I've been dying to bring up this entire time that we were talking. Does anybody else have any comments? Anyone who's played the game, familiar with the story, or have any other suggestions for stories that are similar to this particular case study and myth? Nope. Alright, well, we're going to move on to the last small bit, and then we're done for the night, and that is what to do if the hero is female. And if the hero is female, because we talked about a lot of male examples, she still has to face the consequences. The female counterpart, I think, of the story of Niall and the old hag at the well would be Beauty and the Beast, or many of the other beast husband animal husband stories, where the heroine has to overcome the outward appearance to gain the handsome prince. Campbell also brings up that old story, if you guys remember from weeks ago, of the Arapaho girl who followed a porcupine up the tree that led up into the heavens. The Arapaho girl who followed the porcupine up the stretching tree was enticed to the camp circle of the people of the sky. There she became the wife of a heavenly youth, It was he who, under the form of the luring porcupine, had seduced her to his supernatural home. The king's daughter of the nursery tale, they talk about the Frog Prince story, and how the princess had to, basically he followed her back and kept demanding she keep her promise and marry her. Although this story has an interesting twist, then I'll give you my particular feminist take on it once I've read it. In spite of her great disgust, he followed her to her chair at the table, shared the meal from her little golden plated cup, even insisted on going to sleep with her in her little silken bed. In a tantrum, she plucked him from the floor and flung him at the wall. When he fell, he was no frog, but a king's son with kind and beautiful eyes. And my take on that one that's a little different is that instead of embracing the encounter with the goddess, she basically shows off basically the proper course of action for her is chastity, denying him her bed. And then he becomes the handsome prince. It's a little different from her, and I sense a double standard, but I don't want to dwell too much on that. Psyche, when she accomplished all of her tasks, won Cupid back, if you remember that story from last week. And the Greek Orthodox and Roman Catholic churches celebrate the mystery of the Feast of the Assumption, which is basically when the Virgin Mary is taken into the bridal chamber of heaven where the King of Kings, God, sits on his throne. And they give us this quote from the Bible, or from the Feast of the Assumption, rather. I believe it's probably from the liturgy of that. O Virgin most prudent, whither goest thou, bright as the morn, all beautiful and sweet art thou, O daughter of Zion, fair as the moon, elect as the sun. And in this, you see that I'm going to leave you with the sculpture that was, or a piece here, which is basically a figure of the Virgin Mary, and when you open her up, there is, I believe, a symbol of God or the priest with Jesus inside of her. And that's sort of the boon she gets by literally romancing having an encounter with the higher power. Is this coming up on the screen? All right. So I wanted to thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to join us next week. We're going to be talking about what happens when the hero grows complacent after his encounter with the goddess. And that would be the chapter Women as the Temptress. So I hope to see you next week, and good night for now.